Hi, I'm Andrew Martin. I'm Group Publisher at cybersecurityasian.com. We're really pleased today to have Chris Hockings from IBM, who's going to be talking to us about cyber breaches in the region and how their zero trust technology is helping companies to mitigate the risk of these cyber breaches. Chris, it's great to have you with us today. Would you like to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Good day, and thanks for joining today. My name is Chris Hockings, and I'm a Regional CTO for IBM Security here in Asia Pacific. IBM itself is focused on helping our clients tackle some of the biggest challenges they face around what we call hybrid multi-cloud, data and AI, and an important part of that, of course, in all workloads is cybersecurity. So my focus is on that particular area and engaging with our clients and the market in driving that point of view.
Okay, thanks again for joining us, Chris, and let's just jump straight in with the questions. I know you have a lot of experience dealing with a lot of organizations across Southeast Asia. In that experience, what are you finding are the most common causes of data breach today?
Yeah, so definitely the cybersecurity problem is getting bigger. And, I guess according to our global cost of data breach report, the cost of breaches is also increasing with an all-time high of $4.24 million per incident. That's a 10% increase. Across Asia Pacific, we saw increased costs of data breaches across all of our participating regions in this survey, including South Korea, India, and ASEAN. The most common cause of breaches, let's focus just on ASEAN itself, was around people and passwords. Unfortunately, as backed by some of our recent consumer surveys as well, people are struggling with password management, and they're really just not taking enough care, with 40% of all breaches performed due to either stolen credentials with 22% or with phishing at 18%. The problem is that these compromised credentials lead to compromised data, and that in our report showed us 44% of all breaches was this type of data. What we saw last year also was that third-party software vulnerabilities were particularly painful for our clients, which resulted in approximately 12% of all breaches. And in different regions, it was the most expensive in terms of cost to recover and respond.
Yeah, I think it's particularly interesting that you said that last year that third-party software was a really growing area of penetration for data breaches. I guess with companies doing more and more application integration, that's going to become a bigger issue. With that in mind, which industries do you think are the ones that are being most targeted in the region right now?
So yeah, globally, according to our X-Force report, finance industry was, again, the most targeted industry. And healthcare was number 7. And they're both worth discussing, because when you look at some of the costs of a data breach, the healthcare industry is the one that suffers the most cost in terms of response and recovery for our organizations, or the organizations we deal with. And financial is number 2. So there's kind of 2 lenses to look at this. And if you look at the last 12 to 18 months, obviously the finance industry has been a target for many years, and it's with good reason, right? It's easy to monetize those attacks for the attackers. In the past 12 to 18 months, because of our COVID situation, healthcare has increased in focus for those attackers as they've looked to take advantage of different vectors, like our vulnerability to attacks through phishing campaigns, etc., which means that they can more easily monetize circumstances where healthcare delivery, consequences of our own personal situations make us more vulnerable to clicking on particular links. And we saw during 2020 campaigns where attackers were using, a healthcare angle to attack us and get access to, our financial data. So there is an intersection that we saw over the last 12 to 18 months in these 2 particular industries.
Yeah, so I think it's probably not a surprise that healthcare is number 1. I think that was possibly even the case before COVID, but with COVID, we know there's been so many extra scams and attempts around that particular area. I guess it's also the case that it really doesn't matter what industry you're in. when you're the one that experiences the data breach, it's just as painful. With that being the case, we understand that zero trust is a technology that can really help people. It would be great to understand really what you mean by zero trust and how that technology has evolved over the years.
Yeah, zero trust to me is about a mindset, right? And plenty of us already apply this mindset to our own use of IT services, right? But when you look at zero trust from an organization, enterprise, government perspective, you're really trying to work out how to give the right users the right access to the right data at the right time, right? And what's happened over the last 3 to 5 years is that advances in technology has allowed us to develop what I consider, or what the industry considers, as context. So previously, decision making was made based on static controls that might have been configured manually by individuals. But what we're seeing is advances in technology, AI, analytics platforms have enabled us to make much more complex decisions about whether someone should have the right access to the right data at the right time based on the circumstances that surround that particular access.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting area in terms of being able to know that the person that you believe should have access to that data really is. And with increased remote working, the chances that the wrong person is using the right piece of equipment, I guess, goes up even more. For those people that want to invest in zero trust technology, what kind of infrastructure do they need to have in place, Chris?
So yeah, as I said, it's a mindset, but then it's also a journey, right? As advances in technology have occurred, it's actually given organizations and even vendors and ecosystems an opportunity to implement zero trust scenarios, right? So it's as much about understanding the capabilities that you have within existing tools and systems, and taking advantage of those advanced features to bring together multiple elements to answer that question that I kind of posed before, right? So it is about context, but it's also about working out within your organization which parts of my security program could be applied through a zero trust lens, and moving on that journey in an incremental fashion, so that over time you start to combine your different solutions, technology sets to deliver the outcome that you need to the question that I posed before. So that could be applying it to a network-centric solution space. It could be a cloud-based solution-centric approach. And what we've done at IBM is we've provided 4 different blueprints to help our clients get started on that particular zero trust journey. And that approach really is about being agnostic to the tools and systems and solutions that the client has, and working with them to bring about transformational change that aligns with that zero trust mindset.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I can see how the blueprints that you mentioned help organizations to put their zero trust requirements into context. Just changing the subject a little bit, there is definitely a skills gap in terms of what companies need these days in terms of cybersecurity experience and skills. Is zero trust something that can help close this skills gap?
Well, I think there's a couple of different pieces to that answer. The industry itself has had a skill shortage for many, many years. And we've gone about addressing that by introducing training programs that bring in a diverse set of people into this area to help solve this problem. The second one is we've applied a lot of artificial intelligence, or what we call augmented intelligence, to help people with decision-making processes. But the third one, I think, is really where zero trust applies, and that is the adoption of these advanced analytics capabilities and architecture, actually, because if you start to think about this problem from a zero trust perspective, you start to ask the question of individual products or scenarios. What access is required by this person? What data is it? Under what conditions is this person accessing this particular set of information, right? And by asking those questions, you can really narrow in on what it is and where it is you should place those decision-making processes. right? So I think this breakthrough thinking around zero trust will help us to liberate some of the monolithic practices that we've got in security. And IBM has been pushing this kind of model through its open security approach, open standards, and as I said before, helping our clients get best use out of the technology and solutions they have already by applying this zero trust mindset to their solution delivery processes.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but in the way that you describe it, I can actually see that zero trust is a way to improve an organization's data democratization and actually not only keep your user and data secure, but contribute to better productivity by placing the right data in the right people's hands. Very, very interesting. I think the last thing I'd like to ask is about the real world. Are you able to share any use cases where your implementation of zero trust has really helped a company, particularly in terms of mitigating and reducing data breach risk?
Yeah, and actually zero trust has been around for a long time. It's just made its way into the language in the past few years. And if you look back at some of the scenarios we've implemented at IBM, many of them have been following this zero trust philosophy for some time, and we're not the only vendor doing this, right? So if I look at one particular scenario, which I referred to earlier in the phishing campaigns, trying to steal money from bank accounts, what we did a number of years ago actually is we started to deliver fraud-resistant solutions and services to customers who are using their browser or their mobile device to perform transactions with financial institutions, right? So when we combined what we call zero or global intelligence with the context by which that user is accessing their bank accounts, we were able to remove fraud from those systems by doing a number of things. One, we could ask the client to be blocked, or the banking institution would ask the client to be blocked from that particular transaction. It might drive what we call a second factor or multi-factor authentication scenario, which introduces another feature set. That itself, that combination of the fraud-resistant global threat intelligence with our access management solutions that bring in multi-factor authentication, is exactly a zero trust scenario, right? We're making a decision about accessing or performing a particular transaction on a bank account based on context that we know about the device that the user is using, where they're coming from, perhaps, and also the user themselves. Is this user performing a transaction that they normally would? So what we're seeing is, a programmatic approach, more so than a single domain, where organizations are starting to talk about zero trust at that program level. And they're starting to then plan their investments around integration of different scenarios that deliver an outcome that adheres to that mindset. So as an overall program, as you start to stitch these scenarios together, you get yourself to a point where your overall security fabric and framework are delivering outcomes at speed faster than what we've done in the past.
Yeah, once again, Chris, really interesting stuff that you've just explained to us. I think the whole idea of moving away from this monolithic approach to something that is more contextual and selective really makes a lot of sense. Not only does it make things more secure, but it reduces frustration for users where in the past, for just one small selective breach, maybe all of their access will be blocked, which is definitely sometimes overkill, and it sounds like the technology is there to reduce this impact, but yet still keep us really secure. Once again, Chris, thanks for your time today, and if you would like to find out more about IBM Zero Trust Solutions, visit cybersecurityasian.com where we have articles and more interviews and more details on this really fascinating but important topic.